Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, leopards, a rosette among the thorns. Presented by Nat Hab Expedition Leader Richard de Gouveia. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you everyone for joining me today. What a pleasure it is. And we get to speak about my favorite animal in the world, which is the leopard. And I think we've got to start at the beginning as to why it's my favorite animal, but I've been guiding for Nat Hab for almost 10 years now and guiding for over 15 as a guide, but going to the bush from a very young age, 6 years old. I can remember falling in love with the place and always wanting to see one of these. I watched every Nat Geo documentary, every Discovery Channel show that there was possible on these animals, and never got the opportunity to see them. And it was only when I was 16 years old and I had a friend whose family owned one of these private game reserves, and he took me there, and there was a leopard in a tree, and I nearly lost my mind. And I made it a dedicated choice to then go chase as many leopards as possible for the rest of my life. So I'm still in the process of that, and I would like to explain a little bit about them. Now, this talk is probably going to be about 6 hours long, crammed into 1 hour, so just prepare yourselves. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to be present with these cats, and they're really unbelievable. And the evolution is very interesting. Being a rosetted cat, and by rosettes we refer to these round markings of spots that make a almost like a rose shape, which is different to that of a cheetah, because a cheetah just has these single spots like on the arms here. And a jaguar different because their rosettes are bigger and they have a dot in the middle. So that's the basic difference between these guys. Now, evolution wise, modern day leopards as we know them now evolved and were started around sort of 500,000, 600,000 years ago. And they started to spread out from Africa into Asia and moving afield. Now, based on different analysis and genetic research, there have been strides to try and figure out how all the species on the planet fit in with the classification and where it started. So the cat or the feline race basically started a long time ago, and they split into what became the clouded leopard and Sundra clouded leopards, which are based in the Asian areas, and then our Panthera, which are all our big cats. So at that split, tiger and snow leopard ended up on one side, and leopard, lion, and jaguar, according to the 2006 study, were all in different spaces. So leopard were on their own branch with lion and jaguar, but the latest research is showing that jaguar split off earlier and lion and leopard are very closely related. And this can be seen by a lion. When you look at a lion, especially young lions, you can actually still see their rosettes on their coating, which help with the blending in. So their evolution, they spanned out, and they're probably one of the most successful cats on the planet just because of their home range. There are a lot of subspecies that come along. As you can see, there's the Amma, the Indian, the Persian, the Arabian, the African leopard, the Sri Lankan leopard, the Javan leopard, and the Indonesian one basically, and North Chinan. So they radiated out from Africa through and up across Arabia and into Asia. Very far back historically, leopards would have occurred in Asia too, but we're talking about 6 million years ago. So that's quite a long way away. The other thing you would see here is this Javan leopard, the Pantheropardus pardus melis, the black leopard. It's not the only place where black leopards occur. We have a few black leopards in Africa as well as in India, and in areas where they have become prevalent, the black part is just a melanistic form. Effectively, what's happened is there is this overproduction of melanin, which creates what we call a black leopard, not a black panther. And this black leopard has a 1 in 4 chance of becoming a black leopard if 2 animals mate and they have the recessive gene. So it's a recessive gene. You have to have mother and father with this recessive gene, and then there's a 1 in 4 chance that that animal will turn out to be a black leopard. Now, there are areas that are better suited to this, to finding these animals. Tanzania's got a area called Laikipia, which is very well looked after in terms of this melanistic genetic. Even there are melanistic caracals, different types of creatures that come along with that. Now, when we look at that distribution a little closer, you can see how far afield they were, and the scary part of it is the pinkish color, which denotes extinct areas, and the red areas are where they are now, with possible extinctions being the red dots with the orange. So you have this back and forth where, what have we done? What have we done to these animals? So it was believed that in Africa alone in the 1900s, there were over 1 million leopards. Now we're sitting at maybe 50 or 60,000 left in Africa, which is a scary statistic because that's not a lot of animals by any stretch of the imagination. So while I'm chatting here, I'm going to run you through a little video that I made, a reel of all the beautiful sightings that I had and videos that I made this year with different leopards, and it was really beautiful, really spectacular to spend time with these guys. So enjoy it. So let's move on to what these cats are about. Leopards are solitary hunters, these stealthy, beautiful forest hunters. And the rosettes that they have form such a beautiful coat, but do such an incredible job of being able to camouflage this animal in nearly any environment. You wouldn't think that this beautiful golden coat would disappear, but I have had leopards disappear next to my car. Like, you've seen them disappear there and you can't see them. They're amazing at hiding. And that's where their successes come, is their ability to move around without being noticed. And they spend their time alone for most of their life, Mothers obviously have their cubs and need to rear those. Males move off and try and find territories to be able to do the things they need to do. As cats go, they're not the biggest of the cats. A big male may weigh about 160, 170, maybe 180 pounds, but you're probably looking closer to 150 pounds for a male. And for a female, they can be as small as 40 pounds, 50 pounds, sometimes going up to about 70 pounds when they're getting a little bit on the bigger side of things. And the small nature of theirs means that they're able to fit in a niche and create and carve out a space for themselves that allows them to move freely between everything. They love to hide, love to keep low, and love to keep out of people's faces. So like I said, it took me 16 years to see my first leopard. Even after that, things aren't that easy. In the private reserves where I've worked, especially around Kruger National Park, the leopards have become habituated to human presence into the vehicles. And they have been taught that there's nothing to fear in these animals, in these big green things. But otherwise, they wouldn't want anything to do with us. They would want to disappear into the bush and never be seen. It's the safest for them, keeps them out of the way. Now, when they're patrolling though, they have to move around and mark territories. And as cats, territories are a very important part of their lives. So while they're walking around, they will urinate and spray areas. They also have glands on their face called preorbital glands. So they'll rub their faces up against what they're marking, as well as use their claws. And we've seen cats doing a scratching post. There's also a gland between the digits called interdigital glands, which release a scent compound. But when leopards go and they urinate on something, they do this little squatting motion and squeeze out a bit of urine backwards onto a branch, tree, whatever. And what is amazing is that it smells just like buttered popcorn. I mean, not resembles buttered popcorn. It smells like you just walked into a cinema complex. It smells so good. And I know this for a fact because I remember one day leaning out of the car to take a photo of a leopard that was walking down the road, and I was sort of hanging my arm out and leaning over and trying to get as low as possible to get this cool angle of the leopard walking towards me. And he walked right past the car and then rubbed his head against my elbow, which I didn't find too amusing at the time. Walked past me, his tail hit me in the face, and then proceeded to pee on the back of my head. So I smelled like buttered popcorn for the rest of the day. I still have that hat. Unfortunately, it doesn't smell like buttered popcorn anymore. Now, within these territories, the one thing that they're very good at is they're very good at being arboreal and getting up trees. Now, most cats can climb trees. Leopards have a specific adaptation in the wrists where they can lock their wrists. So when they're coming down, they can come down forward without their wrists folding over and them falling out of the tree. They're very adept at climbing up, and they will sit there and relax, especially in the heat of the day, to get away from tsetse flies when you're in East Africa, but to get up into the breeze and to avoid any competition, because they often have hyenas trailing them trying to get food off of them. So they'll sit up there. It's also a great vantage point. If a lion goes up in a tree like that, it'll get there, but then when it comes down, it's got to hug the tree and then try and get down, and often can end in an injury for those guys. Now, being territorial animals, the difference between them and lions, and we all have an understanding that lions are pride animals. They're group hunters. They form family groups, and those family groups will then move around and hunt more successfully. Now, the reason why lions formed these family groups is because there was a direct competitor called a long-legged running hyena. It's about the same size as a lion, direct competition, and the only way to outcompete these guys was to join forces. leopards have maintained their solitude in some way, shape, or form. Now, this is a map from a great reserve called Londolozi in the Sabi Sands. This is where I saw my first leopard. The family, the friends that I had took me here. And what happens now is it works on the same premise as that of a lion, that you normally have one pride male to about 2 or 3 females. The same falls within a leopard, except a male leopard has a much larger territory. So here you can see the flat rock male's territory, which overlaps with Mahlatla male, and then you have the Senegal bush male. You can see how each of these territories slightly overlaps one another. And it's this very fluid movement that goes back and forth. And within each of these territories, we have females. So here you can see in flat rock male's territory, he's got the Zinzele female, the Nkua female, Piccadilly young female, Piccadilly female, and Mokoswava female. So he has 5 females in his area. The other male, the Piccadilly male the Senegal bush male, he's more central, but these females' territories also overlap other male territories. So it's very fluid in how they move, because when there's mating that's occurring, the female's territory may bias towards the male she's carrying the cubs of, because his job is to protect this area. And what he does is he will move around these territories and he will mark, as I was saying, with the spray all around the edges. He will call and roar, and this roaring is the first sign of stay the hell away, I'm the boss. If the roar is not intimidating, another male may move closer to see and investigate if there's a place for him. Like this Mahlatla male over top here seems to be encroaching somewhat into the flat rock male territory. Flat rock male's been around for a long time. I've met him previously, and on one of my trips recently, I watched him fight with this Mahlatla male. The Mahlatla male lost. It wasn't a great day for him, but he still was there and thereabouts. Now, what this Mahlatla male is going to get to is a wall of scent. And when they urinate, that scent has all the hormones to tell the age, the sex, the sexual status, which individual it is, what their condition is like. All of this information is stored in that urine. And he'll get there and he'll smell it using a thing called the Flehmen grimace. And I'm going to show you a video shortly. You will see the leopard lift its head, bare its teeth. And what that does is it opens up a gland called the organ of Jacobson, which sits on the palate. Those chemicals go in, and he is able to analyze those different chemicals to ascertain whether this is a good place to go and search for a male to kick out, or if we should move to the next area. And as I say, females are far more abundant in their territories and how they move around in these areas. So let's have a watch of this video. You can see he's busy smelling. This was one of the big males in the area when I was at Sabi. See him smelling, big smell, and then he lifts up and he bares his teeth. He's salivating because he's busy following this other young male that he's trying to kick out. And when they get into this hormonal state, they start to salivate heavily to pick up as much scent as possible. Now I'm going to give you a full-blown leopard roar. And that will be the visual or the audio. This is the young male that was being chased away. So a big male doesn't stand for a young male to be in his territory. He doesn't want him anywhere near because it's a threat to him and his cubs, specifically to his cubs, because most leopards are killed through infanticide. The youngsters only have a success rate of reaching about a year at about 20%, 25% if lucky. And infanticide is the biggest reason for this. If a male finds a baby that is not his, he will kill it. So these territorial boundaries are very important, and a male maintaining the territorial boundaries is very important. Lucky for this young guy, that was his dad. And all his dad was doing was trying to move him out of the territory because he'd grown a little long in the tooth and needed to move off because he could be a problem later on. Then we look at their hunting. Leopards are ambush predators, incredibly strong, stealthy ambush predators. Now, let's put strength at a thought process. If you consider that a big male leopard weighs as much as I do, I mean, a bigger one might be a little bit more, but effective weight is about my weight. Their muscle fibers are 8 times denser than ours, which means that he is 8 times stronger than I am. So his effective weight is like 150 times 8 pounds of brute force. And they're mostly crepuscular. So crepuscular is a time that sits in your dawn and dusk, is what we call crepuscular. We've known them to be nocturnal hunters, but their main movements are in this dusk period when the light's sort of starting to change. They know that the lions and hyenas are still sleeping, so they've got a very good chance of trying to get in, catch something, and drag it up a tree before anyone else has a chance to steal it from them, because they're fairly little. So they don't want to lose hard-earned food that they would have wasted energy catching in order to give to something else. And this crepuscular nature, they will then stalk and try and get as close as possible in this very low, we call it leopard crawl, because they can stay right down, bellies on the ground, and come up very, very slowly. It's amazing to watch them hunt too, just because of the fact that they are so patient. So patient. There's no rush. They understand that if they miss, there's a lot of energy that's going to go amiss at the same time. So they need to be present. They need to make sure that they are not giving away their position, and rather wait an hour and catch something than blow it in a short amount of time. And when they do catch something, they will often grab the neck and choke it out there, or do a muzzling where they will stop the thing breathing. Leopards can cover an amazing amount of ground in a very short amount of time. So let's put this in the fact that a leopard will cover 25 meters in a second at full speed. 25 meters in a second. That means it's doing a 100-meter sprint in just over 4 seconds, because I'm giving a little bit of time for it to get up to speed. But 4 seconds. Consider that Usain Bolt did it in 9. There's quite a vast difference between it. And the strength in those legs to launch off, what they will do is they'll catch and they'll go straight for the throat, and then bunny kick out to try and, if they can, disembowel, because that's going to give the best opportunity that if they can fight off, that it's going to go. And what they have are these beautifully sculpted skulls with long canines, which will be able to puncture behind and break the windpipe, or grab into the spine and puncture the spine in order to immobilize their prey. There you can see it. Then they have this row of teeth at the back that come down like scissors. It's called the carnassial shear, and they chop. They're literally like scissors, just cut off pieces of meat to eat. They've even got little barbs on the roof here and barbs on their tongue, which help them lick meat off of bones. These little scapulae is what they're called. Now, when they catch something, they'll look for a point to hoist. This is a baby impala, great feeding time for these guys, easier to catch, easier to get to. And this leopard was looking up the tree to try and get it there. You can see how they will carry it. This was a duiker that this one was carrying, and they will stash them up in a tree. Now, there is a Shangaan, a Shangaan story. And the Shangaans are a tribe of Africans, locals that are around Kruger National Park, and they believe that there's a very good reason why leopards started to take kills into trees. Once upon a time, there was leopard, hyena, and jackal all had a very close-knit relationship. And they would always share food. Leopard would catch something, hyena would take a bit, jackal would take a bit, and leopard would also take his share. And everything was running smoothly. And one day, leopard was walking along and he hurt his paw. So he went to jackal and he said, "Jackal, won't you do the hunting for me tonight, please? I've got a problem with my paw, and as soon as it's better, I'll get back on it. But if you can please get on that, I would really appreciate that." So jackal looked at him and thought, "Nah, you know what? I saw cheetah earlier today. I think I'm going to go try and follow him and see if I can steal some of its food." Leopard was a little taken aback by this, so he went off to hyena. He said, "Hyena, what's up, man? I've got a sore paw. There's a problem here. Won't you please help me? Could you do the hunting tonight? As soon as my paw's better, I'll be back on it and get back to my duties. But for now, will you please help me?" He's like, "Nah, I heard lions pulling down a buffalo this morning, so I'm going to go find them and try and see if I can sneak a bit of food from them. You're on your own, bud." And from that day onwards, leopard decided to take all his kills into the tree so that hyena and jackal couldn't get a piece of it. And this ability to hoist is unreal. A big impala, and I've seen like that big male that I showed you being muzzled, that impala will weigh again close to what a big male leopard will weigh. I've seen one be caught. The leopard is choking it out. A hyena comes in to try and steal it, and the leopard runs with the impala in its mouth at full speed, launches into the air and hits the tree at about 8 foot with an impala in its mouth, with an extra 150 pounds in its mouth. The strength in those shoulders and that neck to be able to do that is just phenomenal. Absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. And this whole scene was set because this was on one of our hidden South Africa photo trips that we did at Mala Mala. Amazing, amazing itinerary. And there was a leopardess and she had 2 adolescents. They were about just short of a year each. And both of them were sitting in the tree, and this one was having a feed, but didn't want its sister coming anywhere near the kill. So there was a bit of snarling and snaring and all sorts of good stuff as we were going along. But a big part of the hunting is learning to hunt. And as a cub, you have to take into account how to do this. And the only way to do that is to play. And mom had brought back the scrub hair for this little guy, and he just had a party with it, throwing it up in the air, playing around with it. And it's so important because it works those fast twitch muscles. It gets them used to the feeling of catching something, and practice makes progress. It's the only way they get better and learn how to do these different types of hunting. And their ability, like I said, to climb trees is just absolutely phenomenal. Vertical trees, 60 feet up, they just go. And coming back down, head down, run down the tree, no problems. The other cool hunt, and if you're watching a couple of weeks ago, I was showing my highlights of 2022. And this was one where we had the kudus down here, and leopards there's a leopard sitting right up top here that you can see in the tree. And they've adapted in this part of Botswana and certain parts of Zambia, especially where there's sausage trees, to hunt from the trees, because the animals come in to eat the flowers, which are full of nectar and very nutritious. And when they come in, they're in the perfect spot. And the leopards just fly from the tree, jump out of the tree, poof, onto their prey and pull them down. I have a bit of a bloodlust, so I was rooting for the leopard. A couple of people weren't. This kudu over here had spotted it and eventually gave a big loud barking alarm call, which gave its position. So I'm going to put a little disclaimer in here. This was not an actual hunt. That male was trying to chase out another young male leopard. In a real hunt at night, we would never have the spotlights on them because it's going to give their position away from the prey. The young boy knew exactly what was going on and who was where and what, so we could have the lights on and be able to video that and see that. Now, making more leopards is an interesting part of their own livelihood. So let's watch a video and then I'll explain a bit more.
Yeah, it came in her face.
So this is basic foreplay. The female's trying to get in close enough and trying to entice the male into mating. At this stage, he was very tired and didn't want anything to do with it. Here comes a female. She's busy trying to entice the male. Watch her come past him. And then she does what is called lordosis and put herself in a position. And she tries to bite his head off. Not very nice, is it? You can see how this is met with a bit of aggression, which is a little strange when it comes to making babies. But cats have a very different way of ovulating and producing babies. So what happens is when the big cats start mating, they will mate every 15 minutes for 5 days. That's what it averages out to. Be far more rapid in the beginning. You know, it can be every 2 minutes or so, and then slow down as time goes on and they get tired and the boy gets a little grumpy, so he's growling and shouting at her going, I've had enough. She's like, but you haven't finished the job. And so the back and forth banter carries on. And she is in a position where she needs to make sure that those babies, that estrus doesn't go to waste. And that's why she mates as much as she does. The other thing that happens is, unlike us, they don't produce an egg every month that then, if it gets used, that's cool. If it doesn't, it gets discarded. It's a completely different system where they need stimulation in order to produce the egg. And the stimulation actually comes from little barbs on the male's penis, which actually hurt her. So when he extracts, it hurts her. And that's what causes that massive chaos jumping, trying to kill her look. So let's go back to that again. So here we go. she's very apprehensive to this.
Let's see what the male is doing.
And that's what causes this chaos, the little bite at the end. And research has pointed us in a lot of different directions, but it's getting clearer and clearer that females actually have the ability to control their ovulation, to choose how many eggs are produced for a specific male. They can mate with different males. So again, let's go back to these cat territories. Let's look at these females are now crossing over. So if we look here at the Nhlangoleni female and Nkua female, they overlap here across this river. If we go up to the river here, you'll notice that both of them fall within these two male sides. So depending on who's the strongest, the female may choose to mate with both of them. Females have the ability to mate with the male and store his sperm inside her for up to 2 weeks. And if she doesn't find a specifically good suitor, she will then ovulate and use that sperm. If she finds a better suitor, she has the ability to eject that sperm and then take on the other males. She also has the ability to come in here and mate with both of these males and produce one egg this side and one egg this side and have a split litter to hedge her bets. Or she may decide that the flat rock male is actually the stronger of the two, have his babies, and maybe move her territory a little bit more into his side so that there's less coming together with this guy. But what she will do here is definitely come and mate with him for a day or two just to throw him off the scent trail, that if he floats across the river here to a new space, he goes, oh, but I did mate with her. It must be my babies. So they're trying to create this illusion to try and extend the life of their cubs. And the cubs are little bundles of fur. The gestation period is only about 100 days, so it's just over 3 months that these little ones are inside, and they come out deaf and blind and pretty immobile, and mom moves them from den site to den site, and she'll find very thick bush or rocks to hide the babies in, and the babies know that when she leaves, it's time to keep quiet, because any sort of noise could mean the end of them. Like I said, there's a very low percentage of babies that make it from 0 to 1 years old. Only 25%. Probably another 30% of those 25% only make it to adulthood. And this is where the balance comes in, because when you're an apex predator, you're not losing 6 animals a week. So you have to have a balance somewhere, and the balance occurs with the babies. It's heart-wrenching, because how tough is it to see a baby die? It's not cool, but it is the process. And when we look at the process, it becomes more beautiful when you see how well it works together. And moms can have a litter of 1, 2, 3 is pushing it, 4 is extreme, but 1 to 2 cubs is normal, and she will try and look after those cubs as best as possible. Like I say, when she moves off, when they get a bit older, they might be a little bit more open to exploring the wilderness a bit and being out in the open. This little one can jump up a tree, so if a hyena comes, it'll just climb up the tree and cheers, we're out. And as time goes on, she will look after these cubs. She hunts for them, she grooms them, she protects them. If those cubs make a peep and somebody tries to get them, she will come and give her life for that cub. The maternal instinct is incredibly strong. And the time spent by babies with their mothers is dependent on where they are. And also what I've found is how dense the leopard population is. Hunting did a big trick, and we'll talk about that shortly, but hunting did a big trick on these guys because people were trying to shoot the animals, often shooting the big males, meaning a new male came in, killing the cubs, So there were these holes, and there was a reserve. There's a reserve called Phinda in South Africa. It's in KwaZulu-Natal, and this reserve particularly had the problem because the surrounding farms were all hunting farms. And eventually, when the South African government put a blanket ban on the hunting, the females were like, okay, cool, let's go. The males stuck around. At 6 months, they were saying to the babies, you're off, you're on your own, go sort it out. And the babies would be independent, far younger than normal. Whereas in climax populations like the Sabi Sands, Kruger National Park, where there's a lot of leopards, this completely changes. So if I read my textbook, it'll say girls will stick with mom for about a year to 14 months, and males may stay on till about 16 to 18 months. I've seen males stick with their mothers for over 2 years because the leopard density is so strong. She wants to give him the best chance possible, so she lets him stay. But at the point that it comes to it's time to go, she starts to tell them, saying, you're too big to be here. You don't need me anymore. You need to move off. And slowly she will start to sever that bond, especially with the male cubs. And the male cubs will be pushed off, and they won't move too far. We've been plotting these territories for a long time, and within the Sabi Sands, these territories have been followed for a very, very long time. And Panthera, a company, a non-profit based out of the States that does a lot of research into cats. I know the main researcher very well, and he set up camera traps. At one stage, we were collecting dung to get DNA samples so that we could see where the family trees actually sat genetically, not just from hearsay, word of mouth. These companies have all kept and named the animals based on territories, but also for those research purposes. Noiti male, I saw grow up from a very young cub. I saw him when he was 3 weeks old. I then saw him way on recently when we were doing our virtual safari during COVID. I saw him come back to his natal territory, which was really interesting. And he only moved, this was Sabi just below, and he only moved one area up. He didn't move far from his natal territory. So where we thought that they were moving very far to get these genetics going would change. So the males would move off and try and find a new place. Here's a perfect example of how females work. Females actually give a piece of their territory to their cubs. And here you can see the Piccadilly female has actually given off a small portion of her land to the Piccadilly young female. And eventually, as one of these, let's say the Plaque Rock female starts to get old, or she's moved down because of she's having babies with one of the other males, the Senegal bush male, then she will start to fill these territories. And it's almost like these colors just mixing and matching and moving. It's not an abrupt change. It's the slow, beautiful change over time. It's really, really, really amazing to see. So leopards, all in all, are just mind-boggling. I can tell you stories for days about each of the leopards I spent time with at Sabi, and that's probably a good topic for another webinar. But conservation is the real thing we need to concentrate on now. I showed you this map in the beginning with the extinct areas being these pinkish areas around, and possibly extinct areas starting to encroach on the resident areas. And you can see how under pressure these animals are. Like I said, over 1 million animals in the 1950s, early 1900s in Africa, and now we're less than about 50, 60,000. And it's going at a rapid rate. And one of the things that was going on was hunting, trophy hunting. A scary, 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 scary thought is this thing called trophy hunting. Because at one stage, the numbers or the quotas that were being put forward were based on rainfall and weather data. They said if this much rainfall falls in the area, there's probably this many leopard, which means you can probably shoot this amount and you'll probably be okay. Unfortunately, what this did was create all these pink areas, which is not great. The same organization, Panthera, their aim is to conserve leopards, and you unfortunately are never going to be able to just say to everyone, listen, you're a bunch of idiots for shooting these animals, stop, and they'll stop. They won't. So they had to find a way to mitigate and manage and get the correct quota systems and ensure that the population long-term wouldn't be impacted. What the research showed was if a male had reached 7 years, he'd done 95% of his breeding. So where a graph would be up and down, but follow the same trajectory over time as balance moves along, with a hunting any male leopards over 7 years old, the graph would drop a tiny bit and then follow the natural curve and keep the population running. Should that be deviated from, it would just drop straight down to extinction. So they went and implemented this. Panthera went across Africa and to all the governments to say, this is how we are going to ID it, but they had to figure out a way to ID it. So they brought to all the guides that were in the Sabi Sands that saw leopards on at least twice a day to go, okay, cool, let's figure out which male leopards are 7 years and older by our pictures. Let's look at this. How do the ears form? What did the nose look like? And they worked out a scorecard to say, yes, this is how we're going to work out that a male leopard is actually older than 7 years. And those were the ones that were shot. And anyone that didn't match that was then fined, or, it was in contravention. And this has been implemented in many countries around Africa and has had a great impact on lifting numbers and ensuring that things are moving in the right direction. Also, quota systems are better now because there's better research on the ground. We have more photographic safaris. We can photograph them, photographic safaris. If we look at a leopard, let's go back to this little guy here. We would name him based on the spot patterning just above the whisker line here. So he would be a 3-3 male, but he's got two very distinctively close ones here and one just inside, and then 3 on this side. If I go to another female, like, let's try to get another head on here, you will notice that on this guy, the 2 spots are a little closer on the other side, even though it's still a 3-3 male or 3-3 female, this one, the spots patterning is different. Also around the eyes, these are different spot patterns. And that's why we say a leopard can never change its spots. Let's see, this was the same female as that other one. It's actually her daughter, sorry. This is the grandmother of those ones. And she was a 3-2 female. So there's 3 spots this side, 2 spots this side. But the genetics starts to rain through quite hard. The other problem we have is human encroachment. And this is an incredible photo by Steve Winter, a Nat Geo photographer, of a leopard in Mumbai, in the main capital city of India. Leopards roam around there all over the place, moving in between because there's not as much space for them and there's a lot of food available for them. Stray dogs, stray cats. And what the research has actually found is that these leopards are doing them a great service because they're removing rabies from the system, because they're taking these vulnerable animals out and not letting these diseases go. This is a massive conservation issue that we face at the moment, is human encroachment onto these areas. And then last but not least, we have a tribe and a religion called Shembe. And the Shembe wear leopard skins as their garments for their church. and it's become a huge problem. I saw a video footage of at least 15,000 people walking down a road, all wearing leopard skins. You consider the damage that's being done by that. And what Panthera have done is they have now created these faux furs that are designed based on leopard furs. They have built them and got the Shembe Church to buy into using this rather than real leopards. And this way, they're counteracting this incredible impact on leopard populations by a belief, by giving them something that looks exactly the same but doesn't harm the animal itself. So I hope you've enjoyed the chat today. Rob, I'm ready for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Now, before we start with the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. So leopards may not be the largest cats, but do they have the longest tail?
That is a great question. I would say no. I don't know the specific answer to this. I'd say no based on body size, because it's more based on body size and the turning angles. Although a cheetah is not a true Panthera, a true cat, it's an Achignonyx is its genus name. They have a much longer tail because of the high speed turns that they do. So I wouldn't put them to the longest tail. Again, tigers may have a long one, but I would have to find that answer out. Sorry.
Thank you anyway. So why is there such a discrepancy in size between the male and the female?
In most animals, especially the cats, they're almost 50% larger than the males are 50% larger. And the whole point is that you're covering greater distance. The bigger you are, the more you need to eat, but they need to eat more because they need to defend themselves against other males. So size matters there. Females aren't fighting as much with females. Yes, there's a territorial boundary. Yes, they can clash, but they'd rather avoid that sort of clash. So there's no point in being big. You'd rather be smaller, more agile, be the right size to catch the correct prey, rather than be too big, because then you stick out.
Great, thank you for addressing that. So how is it that a leopard dad would decide if it's his youngster or another's? Is it scent?
It's a great question. I do not believe it's got anything to do with scent, because scent is unique to each animal, and what's made in the utero can't come out smelling like the father. But I think that there's a knowledge of who mated with who, and that's where this whole game of females crossing boundaries and mating with multiple males happens, in order to ensure that there's no crossover, so that they have a stronger sense of it. And the female will generally move the cubs into a different male's territory. So yeah, there's this unknown. And for a long time, people have said that males play no part besides looking after the territory in the rearing of young. But I've witnessed firsthand on numerous occasions males allowing their cubs to come and feed, not the female, but their cubs were allowed to come up and feed with them, and even coming in and visiting and playing with the cubs for like an hour or two, and then moving off on his merry way.
Great, thank you for addressing that. So you showed the video of the mating scene. Who was it that was growling? Was it both of them or one or the other?
So it's the male. I'll go back there so that you can watch it again. It's very cool. So you'll actually see his throat moving. Jump it. So when he goes down now, you'll see him bite down on the neck. cats carry their young by the scruff of the neck, and there's a nerve that goes along there that, if pinched, makes them go lame. And this is his way of being able to finish off and get out as fast as possible while slowing her down a little bit. So you'll see him drop down now and bite down on that, and then make that noise. Watch his neck. Yeah.
Great. Can you talk about what leopards are hunted for? Is it their fur? Is it the meat or the game?
Definitely not the meat. Fur is a big thing, like I explained with the Shembe tribe. A lot of African culture prides themselves in having skins within the communities. And then the other thing is human animal conflict. Farmers that have livestock, or farmers that have impala or kudu that they may be rearing for hunting or for game meat or something along those lines. These guys are eating their produce, or what they feel is their right. So that human animal conflict is the largest thing, along with hunting itself, just to
Great.
put on a wall.
So can you talk about what the main source of prey for the leopard is?
So because of its size, it is actually its main form of food will be impala. There's a direct correlation between leopard density and impala density, where the impala densities are high, leopard densities are high, because they're the perfect size prey for these guys. But they have the widest diet range of any animal. So they'll eat anything from a dung beetle, which is that big, through to hunting baby rhino. I've seen one jump on, not successfully, but I've seen them pull down a baby giraffe and eland, which is eland is the largest antelope, which can grow to almost 2,000 pounds. Wouldn't have been a full size one, but that's still a massive animal to pull down. So they have this very wide range of diet. If it's there, they will take it.
Thank you for addressing that. Now, let me ask you another question. If I wanted to see leopards, where would you be leading them, and where should I go to see them?
So it's a great question. Let's go back to this map. So in Nat Hab, we have a lot of different trips that touch on leopards. Africa is obviously a major part of it. So South Africa, our hidden South Africa trip is magnificent for leopard. The last lodge we go to, Mala Mala, is world renowned. I have had the privilege of seeing 7 different leopards in one drive. It's ridiculous. Botswana is an amazing place for leopard. And then Zambia, the Zim Zam trip. Zambia is a great place to see leopards. Or any of our East Africa departures are pretty solid in seeing some leopards. Then we have Sri Lanka, which is a very leopard-oriented trip. And we have India, which covers some areas where there are some brilliant leopards, as well as chances of seeing melanistic leopards along those trips.
Wow, great. Thank you, Richard. But unfortunately, that's going to be the last question that we do have time for. So I'm throwing it back to you for your closing comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Rob, for hosting. Thanks, Nat Hab, for making this possible. And thank you to everyone for listening in today. Really love chatting. And if you've got any other questions, please hit me up on social media. Happy to answer. Have a wonderful evening.
Richard, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I would also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you're interested in information on how you can travel with Nat Hab, give us a call on the number on your screen, or you could send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.